The mess hall carried the warm scent of cinnamon and hot chocolate, steam drifting from industrial pots, while Corporal Avery Locke brushed flour from her hands and hummed under her breath. Outside, December wind tore across the forward operating base, but inside, soft yellow lights strung along steel rafters wrapped the room in a cozy glow. "Avery, you're an angel," Leo Marlowe, barely 19, said as he hugged a mug of cocoa like treasure. "Even my moms can't compete." Avery gave him a smile that never fully met her eyes. "Just doing my job." "Yeah," he muttered, "but you make it feel like home." She turned back to the oven, sliding out a tray of cookies. Home. The word still felt strange. This base was the closest thing she had now. 3 years since she'd swapped her rifle for a ladle. 3 years since she'd stepped away from the shadows. The younger troops adored her. Quiet Avery, patient Avery, always ready with a warm meal and a gentle word. They didn't know that some nights she woke drenched in memories of crosshairs drifting in the dark, wind equations running through her mind like half-forgotten prayers. Colonel Bram Harker stepped in, his gray mustache dusted with snow from patrol, and his eyes lingered on Avery longer than they should have. He didn't know everything, but he knew enough to recognize that Avery Locke had been someone entirely different before she became the cook. "Evening, Corporal," she greeted, keeping her hands busy in the sink. "Quiet night so far," he replied. "Good. Let's keep it that way." His voice carried a weighty reminder of things left unsaid. When he exited, Avery's fingers trembled as she dried a pan. In the storage room behind stacked flour sacks sat a locked footlocker she hadn't touched in 6 months. Inside were her old tactical gloves, the worn leather still shaped to her hands like memory itself. "Avery," Leo called from the serving window. "Squad 6 is heading out. They want thermoses." On it. She filled 4 thermoses with coffee, added sugar packets, and sealed them tight. Squad 6 lit on Owen Reddick's people, good troops, young and proud. She passed the thermoses through the window and watched them prep gear by the armory. Outside, Christmas lights blinked on the comms tower. Originally a joke, now a tiny rebellion against the bleak night. Off-key carols drifted from the rec room, sung by homesick soldiers. Avery wiped down her counters with the same methodical precision she once used calculating bullet drop past 2,500 meters, the same focus she carried when she'd gone by ghost lantern, the sniper no one ever saw. That name was buried now, buried with the woman who earned it. At 22:30, she began prepping late-night rations for the watch rotation. The base eased into its nighttime rhythm, guards rotating posts, low crackles from radios, distant generators rumbling. She was rolling dough for morning biscuits when Noah Teller rushed in. "Avery, any coffee left? Tower wants 2 more pots." "Sure," she said, starting a fresh brew and breathing in its sharp comfort. "Cold enough to freeze your breath," Noah muttered. "Stay warm." "Always do. Thanks to you." He left with the pots. Alone again, Avery caught her reflection in a stainless steel cabinet. 32. Blonde hair in a regulation bun. Green eyes that had seen far too much. Hands that still remembered the weight of a trigger. She touched the scar on her left palm, the shrapnel from her final mission. 12 hostages saved, but the cost still lived in her nightmares. The radio crackled. Routine check-ins. All clear. All quiet. Christmas Eve in a combat zone felt almost peaceful. Almost. Then the radio exploded with panic. "Command, this is Squad 6. We're taking fire. Heavy contact. Multiple casualties." Reddick's voice, usually steady, tore through the mess hall with raw fear and static. Avery's flour-dusted hands froze mid-motion. Squad 6, command copies, give position. Grid Echo 7-9er. We walked straight into an ambush. They were waiting. Morrison is hit. We need extraction now. Gunfire drowned out the rest. Avery's heartbeat slammed in her chest. She moved to the doorway as soldiers sprinted toward the command center. Colonel Harker's voice roared across the compound. The command center doors were open. Avery edged closer, listening. Echo 7-9er is 2 clicks northeast, Ridge Country, Captain Reese Calder said, stabbing a finger at the map sprawled across the table. The nearest quick reaction force was 40 minutes out, and when Colonel Bram Harker heard that, he slammed his fist on the table. 40 minutes? They won't survive 10. Another officer tried to steady the moment, insisting assets were already moving, but the terrain wouldn't let them get there fast enough. A broken transmission cut through the room, Lieutenant Owen Reddick's voice barely holding together under the chaos behind him. Command, we're losing people. We can't hold. Static swallowed the rest. From the doorway, Avery Locke studied the map. Echo 7-9er. She knew that ridge by heart. High ground on 3 sides, a perfect funnel for a kill box. Squad 6 had been trapped exactly where any seasoned sniper would expect an ambush. We need overwatch, a young lieutenant muttered. If we had a sniper with a line of sight. Harker spun back sharply. Our marksman is with the QRF. We have nobody. His eyes drifted toward the doorway and froze on Avery. For a moment, neither of them moved. She saw the question forming in his expression, the one he already knew he couldn't ask. He answered himself with a slight shake of the head. Not her. Not again. Keep coordinating with QRF, he ordered. Get me air support, even recon drones. A voice answered, Sir, weather's tanking. Visibility is 0. Avery slipped, away, pulse hammering. She walked fast across the compound toward her quarters as calculations she thought she'd buried began resurfacing. Wind speeds, elevation lines, firing lanes. In the cold storage room, she knelt beside the footlocker. Her fingers spun the combination without hesitation, and the lock clicked open like it had been waiting. Inside lay the M210 ESR, 300 Win Mag, precision engineered, the kind of rifle you didn't just carry, you respected. Her ghillie suit was compressed beside it, along with the night vision scope, rangefinder, and those old gloves. She lifted the rifle, feeling its familiar weight settle into her arms, comforting and terrifying at the same time. The case was stamped with a notation she had sworn she'd never see again. Ghost protocol, restricted use. She had promised herself she was done, that she'd never touch this weapon again. And yet Leo's grin flashed through her mind. Eli Ward's grateful nods. Reddick's strained voice. They were out there bleeding while she stood in a kitchen. Avery tore off her apron. In the dim armory shadows, Sergeant Cole Danner caught her loading magazines and froze. Avery, what the hell are you doing? She didn't look up, hands working in smooth, practiced motions as she pressed 300 Win Mag rounds into place. 20 of them. She would need every one. What does it look like? It looks like you're about to do something unbelievably reckless. Danner grabbed her shoulder. Harker gave strict orders, no solo ops. QRF is coming. Too late, she said quietly. He stared at her like she'd spoken a secret she wasn't supposed to know. How can you be sure? Echo 7-9er is a kill box. Reddick's team is pinned low with high ground on 3 sides. Classic L-shaped ambush. They've got maybe 20 minutes before the enemy collapses the pocket. His expression shifted from frustration to shock. How do you even know that? Who are you? Avery slung the rifle case over her shoulder. Nobody. Just a cook. That's not a cook's weapon. His eyes dropped to the stamped designation and went wide. Ghost protocol? Jesus. You're her. You're Ghost Lantern. That person doesn't exist anymore. Then why are you holding her rifle? Avery stepped past him. Because 6 good people are dying on Christmas Eve and I can stop it. Harker will court-martial you. Let him. She moved through the perimeter like she'd never left the life, slipping into blind spots she'd memorized over 3 years of pretending to be invisible. The night swallowed her as she changed into dark clothing, strapped on her load-bearing vest, and secured the ghillie suit to her pack. The rifle case settled across her back with a familiar burden. 2 kilometers. She could cover that in 25 minutes, even in this darkness. Her breath fogged in the freezing air, stars slicing between racing clouds. No. Moon. Great for hiding, awful for shooting. She'd adapt. As she ran, muscle memory took over. Her pace shifted into the steady, ground-eating stride of a trained sniper, quiet, controlled, efficient. The wind pushed hard from the northeast. She mentally adjusted for drift and cold air density. Colder air meant less bullet drop. 1 kilometer out, she heard the sharp crack of AK fire answered by the crisp pop of American M4s. Squad 6 was still alive. Avery dropped into a crouch and moved with more caution. This was enemy territory now. There would be security elements, maybe lookouts. She slipped into the mode she hadn't used in years, the one where she became smoke, moving where shadows hid her and the terrain shielded her thermal signature. 500 meters from Echo 7 Niner, she reached a rocky outcrop on the western ridge, elevated 30 meters above the kill box. Perfect sightlines, multiple exit routes, solid cover. She set down her pack and assembled the rifle piece by piece. Barrel, stock, scope, bipod, each motion a muscle memory prayer. The night vision optic locked onto the rail with a soft click. She loaded a magazine, chambered a round, and slid on the gloves. Leather worn smooth, smelling faintly of gun oil that had never fully washed out. The moment they tightened around her fingers, Avery lock faded away. Ghost Lantern returned. She settled behind the rifle, her body instinctively falling into a shooting stance that once felt as natural as breathing. Left leg tucked and right leg stretched for balance, Avery locked her elbows at the familiar angle, cheek resting perfectly against the rifle stock. Through the night vision scope, the world shifted into ghostly greens and grays, and now she could see everything clearly. Squad 6 huddled in a shallow dip in the ground, using dead timber and scattered rocks for whatever cover they could steal. 4 of them were still moving, 2 weren't. She recognized Eli Ward's broad frame lying motionless, another soldier desperately trying to work on him. The enemy ringed them on 3 sides exactly like she'd predicted. Close to 30 fighters stretched across the elevated ridges in a flawless ambush layout. They were patient, waiting for the Americans to run dry, panic, or make a doomed break for it before the trap snapped shut. These weren't amateurs. This wasn't chance. Someone had planned this. Avery's hands glided across the rifle, checking every detail by feel. The smooth bolt, the safety clicked off, the scope sharp and steady. 3 quiet years of stirring pots hadn't dulled what lived in her bones. A memory pushed up uninvited. Afghanistan, 4 years earlier, different peaks, same biting cold. Back then, she'd been Lantern 1, partnered with Mason Rourke, her spotter who loved to joke she could thread a needle at 1,000 meters. "You don't shoot targets," Mason had told her once, grinning. "You erase them. One moment, they're here. The next, they're gone. Light snuffed out. That's why they call you Ghost Lantern." But Mason was gone now, killed in the mission that shattered her. The op where they saved 12 hostages but paid for it in blood. He'd taken the round meant for her, dying in her arms while she screamed for a medic who showed up too late. She could save strangers, but not him. Avery shoved the memory down. Not now. Focus. Wind from the northeast, gusting around 15 miles an hour. She watched how the grass bent, then settled again. Predictable enough. Range to primary targets, 400 to 700 meters, all within her reach. She spotted the enemy commander moving between positions, directing fire and tightening the noose around her people. He'd be the first to fall. Removed the head. Second target, the PKM team on the eastern ridge, the gun that had Squad 6 pinned flat. Third and fourth, the 2 spotters on northern high ground, coordinating the fire pattern. Fifth, the older fighter acting like a tactical advisor. 5 shots, 5 bodies. It would break the command chain and give Squad 6 their only window. Avery breathed, slow and deep. Her heart slipped into that sniper rhythm where everything steadied, where tremors vanished, and the world shrank to nothing but crosshairs and angles. This was the place she'd sworn she'd never return to. The state where humanity dimmed and she became a tool of math and violence. But Leo Marlowe was down there. So was Eli Ward, and Lieutenant Owen Reddick, who'd carried sacks of flour with her and laughed about his aching back. They weren't troops to her anymore. They were people she'd fed, listened to, cared about. They were hers. The commander drifted into the center of her crosshairs. Avery's finger settled on the trigger. Time to remind the night why they once feared the Ghost Lantern. Through the scope, the battlefield sharpened with brutal clarity. Squad 6's situation was even worse than the radio suggested. They were crammed into a dried creek bed with barely 3 feet of cover while enemy fire raked them from all sides. 2 were down entirely, Eli Ward and Mark Tavin, the smaller private whose frame she recognized. The remaining 4 were burning through their ammo, discipline slipping as fear crept in. Reddick was trying to coordinate a fighting withdrawal, but there was nowhere to go. The enemy had boxed them with surgical precision. Avery swept her scope over the terrain, cataloging every threat. 32 fighters she could see, maybe more waiting in reserve. Their weapons were a mix of AK variants, RPGs, and the PKM heavy gun chewing the ground apart. That PKM was the keystone. Set on a rock shelf overlooking the entire kill box, it owned every inch of Squad 6's world. Move an inch wrong, and it shredded them. The commander stood arrogantly near the gun crew, radio in hand, either calling reinforcements or orchestrating the final push. Avery checked her. Watch, 23:18. QRF wouldn't arrive until 23:55. Squad 6 had maybe 10 minutes before this became a massacre. She studied the wind again. It had steadied, less drift to compensate. The temperature was plunging, air density rising. She adjusted the elevation knob 1 click to match the cold. Range to the commander, 637 meters. Elevation difference, 28 meters. Wind around 12 miles an hour, 3/4 value from the east. The math flowed automatically. Bullet drop around 98 inches. Wind deflection around 6 inches. She shifted her aim, high and left. Then something caught her attention. The enemy layout was too perfect, too structured. They knew the patrol route. This wasn't luck. Someone had leaked information, somewhere in the chain, not necessarily in the squad. They'd shaped this kill zone specifically for American patrols, which meant they might have backup plans waiting in the dark. Avery widened her scan, looking for shadows that didn't belong. There were security elements Avery Locke hadn't seen yet. Quiet silhouettes tucked farther out. Their own quick reaction forces waiting for a chance to counter any American escape. She widened her scan across the ridges and caught movement on a distant rise about 700 meters out. Two figures watching the ambush through binoculars, clearly a perimeter team. Then she spotted another cluster. 5, maybe 6 fighters buried in the tree line north of the creek bed, positioned to cut off any breakout attempt. Avery recalculated silently. 40+ enemies. Squad 6 was outnumbered almost 8-1, her jaw clenched. 5 opening shots wouldn't be enough. She'd have to tear their confidence apart, make them feel surrounded, make them believe a much bigger force was hunting them. She'd have to be flawless. Through the scope, she watched Lieutenant Owen Reddick try to secure a tourniquet on Eli Ward's leg while still firing back. His hands trembled, whether from shock, blood loss, or raw fear she couldn't tell. Probably all three. Leo Marlowe crouched beside him, face ghost pale even under night vision, firing in short, controlled bursts despite the panic. "Hold on," Avery whispered, though none of them could hear her. "Just hold on." She eased deeper into her shooting posture, settling into the rhythm where the rocks, shadows, and cold all blended into her. Ghost Lantern rising again, whether she wanted her to or not. At 23:32 hours, her finger tightened gently on the trigger. The enemy commander filled her reticle, oblivious to the judgment waiting in the dark. She felt the wind shift, a sudden eastward gust, and waited. Patience was the weapon that made the others work. When the wind steadied, Avery timed her shot between heartbeats and squeezed. The suppressed crack still thumped against her shoulder like an old friend. In the scope, she saw the commander's head snap back before he dropped like a cut marionette. For one suspended second, nothing moved. Then panic detonated across the ridge. Fighters scrambled, shouting, losing cohesion instantly. Where had the shot come from? Who was out there? Their perfect ambush fractured into chaos. Avery was already swinging to her next mark. The PKM gunner whipped his heavy weapon around, scanning frantically, his silhouette outlined against the starlight. A fatal mistake. She fired. He fell across the machine gun. His loader froze in shock, staring at the body. Third shot. He toppled before he even understood. Down in the creek bed, Squad 6 realized something had changed. Reddick's voice broke over the radio, ragged. "Command! We've got an unknown sniper engaging hostiles! Repeat, unknown sniper!" Avery ignored it and shifted to the northern ridge. 2 enemy spotters were sweeping for her muzzle flash with night vision. She dropped the first at 600 meters. He tumbled backward off the rocks. The second panicked and bolted from cover. Rookie mistake. She led him slightly, squeezed, and he folded mid-stride. 4 shots, 5 seconds, 4 of their command elements gone. Enemy fire slackened immediately as confusion rippled through their ranks. Some shooting blindly at shadows, others trying to reposition in a hurry. Avery's receiver, tuned to Squad 6's channel, crackled again. "What the hell is going on? Who's firing?" Reddick demanded. Leo's younger voice broke through, shaking but hopeful. "It's a ghost, Lieutenant. A Christmas ghost." Avery allowed the faintest smile. "Close enough." She swapped magazines smoothly. 18 rounds left, 40 enemies still breathing. but no longer confident predators. The fight had shifted. Squad 6 wasn't prey anymore, but chaos alone wouldn't save them. The ambushers would regroup fast. She had bought minutes, not safety. Before anyone smart figured out her position and called in mortars, she had to keep pressure on them. She lined up her next shot, one of the reserve fighters trying to rally the scattered groups. Through her scope, she watched him bark orders, waving his arms to regain control. She ended his plans with a single round. Then it happened. Muzzle flashes burst to her left, rounds sparking inches from her position. They'd triangulated her. A 5-man assault team was pushing up the western ridge, laying down suppressive fire as they advanced. Tight formation, coordinated movements. Not local militia, but trained fighters. Avery ripped the M210 close and rolled hard to the right, abandoning her perch just as automatic rounds shredded the rock she'd occupied. Stone chips stung her face as she crawled behind a boulder, assessing quickly. 5 enemies, 200 meters, and closing fast. They knew where she'd been, but not where she was now. The advantage would last seconds. Her problem was immediate and ugly. The M210 was built for precision long-range work, not brawling at 50 meters, and she'd left the base in such a rush she hadn't brought a sidearm. Only what the Ghost Protocol locker held. Amateur mistake. The old Avery would never have done that. 2 choices: slip away through the rocks and re-establish a new firing position, or stay close, fight at near-contact range with a weapon designed for 10 times the distance. But if she bailed now, Squad 6 would be buried again. Avery made her decision. She slung the rifle and drew the only close-quarters tool she had, an 8-inch combat knife, darkened steel catching no light. It would have to do. The assault team split, 2 moving along the ridge to flank high, 3 climbing straight up the rocks below. Smart. Classic envelopment. Avery moved like water through the terrain, silent, shifting with the shadows. This was the part of sniper training movies never show, the art of disappearing, of flowing through enemy lines like smoke. The first hostile rounded a boulder, rifle raised. He never saw her behind him. She clamped a hand over his mouth and slid the blade between his ribs. He convulsed once, then sagged. She lowered him gently, scooped up his AK-47 and ammo. Much better. The second fighter heard the faint scrape of gravel and started to turn. Avery Locke dropped the second hostile with 2 suppressed shots from the captured AK, the rounds barely louder than the wind. He slumped silently, but the third fighter spotted the fall and swung his rifle up, shouting, "Alert!" Avery was already moving, diving behind a slab of rock as automatic fire chewed the air where she'd been standing. She rose into a crouch and fired controlled bursts, tagging him center mass. He toppled instantly. The last 2 enemies on the ridgeline opened up from above, their elevated angle raining rounds down onto her position. Sparks leapt off the stone around her. 1 round punched into her left shoulder, ripping through muscle. Agony lit up her arm, but she bit it back, rolling into deeper cover as warm blood soaked her jacket. The wound wasn't fatal. She could still move the arm, even if every twitch screamed. But the bleeding left a trail. The 2 remaining fighters were closing in, slower and more cautious now that they'd seen how quickly the others died. Avery checked the AK's magazine. Half a load left. Enough. She controlled her breathing, smothering the fire in her shoulder. When the first enemy edged around the boulder, she sent 3 rounds into his chest. He dropped instantly. The final fighter panicked and bolted down the ridge. Avery tracked him with the rifle but didn't pull the trigger. Let him run. Let him spread terror about the phantom in the rocks who refused to die. She moved 60 meters to a fresh perch and pressed a field dressing to her shoulder, using her teeth to cinch it tight. The pain flared white-hot, but she shoved it into the mental box where discomfort was smothered. She ran a quick check on the M210. Still operational, still ready. Good. Through the scope, she saw how the battlefield had transformed. The enemy formation was shattered, their once perfect ambush broken into scattered, frightened pockets. Squad 6 remained pinned in the creek bed, but the crushing pressure was gone. They were regrouping, treating wounds, preparing to move. Alvary grabbed a captured radio from one of the dead fighters. She didn't understand the language, but the frantic tones were clear. Fear, confusion, demands for direction. Their commander was dead, his second dead, their structure collapsing under the assault of a ghost they couldn't find. Avery switched to Squad 6's frequency. Her voice came out low and commanding. Lantern to Squad 6. Enemy forces are scattered. You've got a 90-second break on your eastern flank. Move to grid Echo 7-7. Silence. Then Lieutenant Owen Reddick, wary. Lantern, identify yourself. No time. Move in 90 seconds or you die here. Your call, Lieutenant. How do we know? Avery cut him off. Leo Marlowe, your mom's hot chocolate isn't half as good as mine. Eli Ward, you ask for extra portions every damn night. And Lieutenant, you helped me move flour sacks 3 weeks ago and complained about your back for 2 days. You know my voice, now move. A brief pause. Then, copy Lantern. On your mark. Avery swept her scope across the eastern ridge. 2 enemy positions threatened their escape. She dropped both with crisp, clean shots. Route is clear. Move now. She watched Squad 6 push out of the kill box. 2 soldiers carrying Eli on a makeshift stretcher. Leo and another private offering cover fire, while Reddick coordinated spacing. Even damaged, they moved like a team. Avery shifted again, always keeping ahead of them. 3 enemies were circling to cut them off, 700 meters out, bad angles. She took the shots anyway. 1, 2, 3, each target collapsing. Keep moving, she transmitted. You've got 600 meters of open passage. QRF will hit you in 8 minutes. Lantern, who are you? Reddick breathed. Awe and confusion tangled together. Nobody. I was never here. Avery watched them advance toward safety, her scope shadowing their movement, her rifle ready to erase anything that threatened them. The remaining enemy fighters were retreating now, the ambush dissolving into a panicked rout driven by an attacker they never even glimpsed. When Squad 6 reached the rally point where the QRF would link up, Avery felt a rare wave of relief. They'd live. All 6 of them, including Eli, would see Christmas morning. She glanced at her watch. 23:51. The entire fight had lasted 19 minutes. 19 minutes that stretched like hours. She broke down the M210 with practiced efficiency, ignoring the blood seeping through her bandage. She had to return before anyone realized she was gone. Ghost Lantern had to vanish so Avery Locke, the quiet cook, could return. She reached the perimeter at 03:07 on Christmas morning. She'd cached the rifle and gear 200 meters out, buried where only she would find them. Now she wore nothing but her fatigues, her jacket hiding the shoulder dressing. The bleeding had mostly slowed. She'd packed the wound with combat gauze and pressure, but she knew she needed real medical care later. First, she had to slip back to the mess hall without being spotted. Avery Locke slid through the same perimeter gap she'd used earlier, timing the guard rotation to the second. Across the compound, she could already hear the commotion. The QRF had returned with Squad 6, soldiers cheering, medics sprinting toward the wounded. Avery reached the mess hall's back door. Empty. Good. She shrugged off the blood-soaked jacket and shoved it deep into the industrial trash bin. The torn shoulder screamed with every movement, but she forced herself to wrap it again with fresh bandages from the first aid kit she kept under the counter. Then she pulled on a clean chef's coat, thick enough to hide the dressing. Her hands were trembling now, adrenaline finally draining out of her veins. She gripped the stainless steel counter until her breathing steadied. "Avery, thank God. There you are." She spun. Sergeant Cole Danner stood in the doorway, pale and shaken. "I saw you leave," he said quietly. "Didn't tell anyone, but Colonel Bram Harker is going to figure it out. Let him." "They're calling it a Christmas miracle," Danner whispered. "Squad 6 swears some guardian angel saved them, a ghost sniper rising out of nowhere." He stepped closer. "But I know the truth." Avery met his eyes. "What truth?" "That you're a damn hero." Before she could answer, boots thundered outside and the mess hall door flew open. Harker strode in, flanked by Major General Adriana Volt and Brigadier General Ross Keaton, high-level brass she'd only ever seen on rare inspection visits. Harker's gaze went straight to Avery, then dropped to the spreading red on her white chef's coat. "Corporal Locke," he said slowly, "would you happen to know anything about an unidentified sniper who saved Squad 6 tonight?" Avery straightened. "No idea, sir." "Really?" Volt stepped forward, sharp eyes cutting through every lie in the room. "Because Lieutenant Reddick is adamant the voice on the radio sounded just like the woman who makes his coffee every morning." Avery stayed silent. Keaton spoke next, gentler. "Ghost Lantern, we thought she retired. Thought she was finished with field work." "Maybe she was," Avery said quietly. "But good people were dying." Harker closed the distance between them. "You disobeyed direct orders. You abandoned your post. You took restricted weapons without authorization." "Yes, sir." "And you saved 6 lives." Harker finished. Avery gave one small nod. The 3 officers exchanged a long look. Finally, Volt said, "We'll address the regulations later. Right now, Corporal, you need real medical care. That shoulder isn't optional." "It can wait." "No," Harker snapped. "It can't." Christmas morning arrived under a pale winter sunrise. Avery sat in the medical tent, shoulder properly cleaned and bandaged. The doctor had offered painkillers, but she refused. She needed a clear head. At 800, Squad 6 walked into the mess hall for breakfast. They froze when they saw Avery at the stove flipping eggs and bacon, as if she hadn't spent the night bleeding in the mountains. "Avery," Lieutenant Reddick said softly. She looked over her shoulder. "Morning. Breakfast in 5. Leo Marlowe stepped closer, emotion twisting his face. "You saved us." "I was just in the area," she murmured. Eli Ward, limping heavily, added, "Your Ghost Lantern, the legend." Avery turned the eggs, saying nothing. "Why?" Reddick asked. "Why risk everything for us?" She finally faced them, spatula in hand. "Because you're not just soldiers. You're people I care about, and I wasn't going to let you die on Christmas." Leo crossed the space and hugged her carefully, mindful of her shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered. One by one, the rest of Squad 6 approached, not with salutes or formality, but with simple human gratitude. After they ate, Reddick set something on the counter, a metal badge handmade in the machine shop, engraved with "Lantern of Christmas Eve." "We made this for you," he said, "so you remember that you matter. What you can do matters." Avery picked it up, fingertips tracing the letters. She felt a wall inside her, one she'd built 3 years ago, start to crack. "Thank you," she whispered. Later, after they left, she returned to her quarters and pulled out the old footlocker. She opened it again. Inside lay the M210, cleaned and oiled, retrieved before dawn. This time she didn't lock the box. Instead, she placed the little metal badge beside the rifle. Two halves of her life finally allowed to exist together. The protector and the cook. The ghost and the woman. She could be both. Outside, soldiers walked the base, whispering about the miracle of Christmas Eve. The phantom sniper who appeared from nowhere and vanished into the dark. But Avery Locke knew the truth. Sometimes ghosts return for the people they love.